Welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda, and we are doing this a little bit differently today because I want to share some things on my screen with you as we talk about what we know so far about the CrossFit Games. And we do know some things. We have 3 of the events announced. Now, how many events are we going to have? That we don't actually know yet. Usually it's between 12 and 15. So we have a small chunk of the events announced at this point. And these events, 2 of them are outside, and then the other event will be indoors. This year, we're having a lot less outdoor events. So if you are new here, the CrossFit Games, the 2024 CrossFit Games, are going to be held at Dickies Arena. That is in Fort Worth, Texas. Previous to this, they were held in Madison, Wisconsin, and it was at a venue that had both an outdoor and an indoor facility. So there was a lot more opportunity to do a lot of different things at the games and a lot of different things in different venues with different capabilities. This year, we're going to be mostly indoors. And Dave Castro, the programmer for the individuals this year at the CrossFit Games, he has said that there's going to be only a few outdoor events. So the 2 that we have right now are the only 2 that are planned and likely to happen. Now, CrossFit reserves the rights to change up anything at any time that they want. So could they throw in another outdoor event? I mean, anything is possible. I think it is highly unlikely, but it is possible. So we have these 2 events, and we're going to start with the first event, not the first announced event, but the first event that we will be seeing at the 2024 CrossFit Games. And that is event 1. It is going to be a run swim. So let's put that up on the screen so everyone can see it. This I got from the barbell spin, as you can see right on the screen there. If you don't follow the barbell spin, you should go over to their Instagram, Brian Spin's Instagram, follow that account. Also, they have a YouTube channel here and a website. So lots of places to find that information. CrossFit gave us some idea of what individual event 1 was going to be, but they didn't give us this map that Brian Spin has populated and believes is what we're going to see. So we also know now from Dave Castro that this event is going to be done early in the morning. It's going to be done at 7 a.m. It is very hot in Texas in the beginning of August. So they are taking athletes' safety into account and what the athletes need to be able to work out safely for the rest of the weekend, right? Because this is event 1. You don't want to see people getting some sort of heat related illness after event 1. So doing it early in the morning, 7 a.m. I believe it is still pretty hot in Texas at 7 a.m., but it'll probably be less hot than it would be at like 2 p.m. Here is the loop. You can see it. CrossFit announced it as a 4-mile run swim, but didn't tell us how much that would be running and how much of it would be swimming. So this is what Brian Spin found. There's an open grassy area. That's where we expect the mass start to be, or at least Brian does. Give him credit for finding this. I am just trying to share it with more people and give my perspective on some of this. But to me, this looks very realistic based on what I've seen at previous CrossFit Games. I attended the CrossFit Games both when it was in Carson, California, and also when it was in Madison, Wisconsin. So I have quite a bit of, experience seeing what they do for these types of events. A lot of times they do start with mass starts. We saw that back in Huntington Beach, people falling on the sand in that mass start. And I think we're going to see it again here in Texas. And they said 7 a.m. So I'm guessing it's going to be women and men at the same time going at 7 a.m. It's, a fairly big trail. People will have to jockey for position at the beginning, but then they'll be able to, just go. And I'm sure the best will create some space in this event. So they won't be running with the whole mass of people. But I think we're going to see factions sort of start, like groups of people. We'll see like a top group in the front, and then we'll see groups of people sort of staying together on the run. And I think some of those people will try to separate themselves at the very end. But they are ending with the swim. And I think that's really going to change things because if you're a good swimmer, you're going to be able to make up a lot of ground on that swim. So, this for the run, what Brian believes is that it's a 3.45-mile run. So, a little over a 5K. And then they would enter a dock. And then there's looks like about a half mile, maybe a little bit more of a swim. So, like 900 meters, maybe like 800, 900-meter swim. That's a long swim to just be in open water. It's not like swimming in a pool. Most of these athletes, when they practice swimming, if they practice at a pool, they're used to touching the wall, getting like a sort of break, or just having the security of touching a wall. Because I think that feeling that that's there, knowing that that's there and you're able to stand up and you're safe is one thing. Being in the middle of this lake, which I've heard is pretty deep, is a different thing, because these athletes are not going to be able to stand up. They're going to have to keep moving the entire time. And I'm sure there will be boats out there to help anyone if they need it for an emergency situation. But I will also say that in the past, we've seen if you touch like a buoy or a canoe with a person on it that's there for their safety, that you are DQ'd for that, possibly from the event, possibly from the competition. So there will be people out there for people's safety. I don't think there's going to be any way to just grab and hold on to things unless you want to risk your position in the event or your ability to finish the event or compete the rest of the weekend. This is going to be a challenge. That's a long swim, like I said, in open water. And there's a lot of room for people to panic. But the positive about the way this is set up right now is, well, the way people are predicting it'll be set up. And CrossFit did announce it as run, swim. So ending on the swim is what we should anticipate from the name. Ending on the swim will mean that people aren't jockeying as much for position during the swim. So I think that'll allow some people to feel a little bit safer in the water. If you've ever done a triathlon, I've done some sprint triathlons. That first swim, the only swim, the swim, you start all together in the water, and there's a lot of like arms, legs, punching, elbows, a lot of that stuff. And that can lead people to panic. Because the swim is second to the run, people will already be a little bit more spread out. Like I said, I think people are going to end up running like in groups. We're going to have like the leading group, and then we'll have some other groups of people. So most likely not many people will be entering the water totally alone, but more alone than if it was a mass start in the water. So I think that'll help ease some of those anxieties and prevent any like safety issues or less safety issues from arising in the water. But definitely something to look out for. That swim's going to be tough. It'll be interesting if you're there in person to be able to spot people, but I imagine they'll have some cameras that can zoom in so we can see some people as they are actually swimming during the broadcast, unless this isn't broadcast. I don't know if this event's going to be broadcast. Traditionally, they broadcast all of it, or they try to, but I know that at semifinals in the last few years, they have reduced the amount of events they broadcast live. And with this course looking as you see it, I could see them possibly not broadcasting this. Again, that is just a thought as I'm sitting here and looking at it. And I know that when we were in Madison, they had that whole facility for the whole weekend. So it was easy to set up cameras on the course. I don't know if it's going to be as easy and how long they are renting this potential space for, because it's not for the whole weekend. I imagine like it was in Madison, where that whole facility was, the Align Energy Center was theirs for the weekend. Just a thought. This event may or may not be broadcast. Something to keep in mind heading into the games at the beginning of August about this. If you're there though, I don't think you need tickets to go to this part. So, although I don't know how many people they're going to be letting in, I don't know if they're going to be letting anyone in. It's a little bit of, there's a lot of questions with how this is going to operate for spectators, for the broadcast. and for the athletes really at this point. This is Brian Spin's, I think, very good prediction, but just a prediction at this point. The event is just a 4-mile run swim. That is really what we know from CrossFit. But I thought this would be more interesting to talk about in this little video that I'm doing. It feels like I'm doing a live stream because I'm recording this as if it was a live stream. But the reason I'm not live is because lives don't do as well on my channel. So it felt easier to record this and then post it. But maybe I'll do stuff like this live if people like that and tell me in the comments that they want to see more things like this live as opposed to live to tape, which is essentially what I'm doing now. Live to tape is like a dated broadcast term. It's live to digital. I don't know, but that's what we're doing. So let's move on to event 2. So I am going to share that with all of you, or not event 2. We don't know the events. We don't know event 2 at all, actually, right now. But we have event 6 that was just announced. So we'll take a look at that. And I'm going to use Morning Chalk Up's post about this because they have some comments, which I thought could be interesting to talk about as well, because we don't really need a lot of the information. And by the way, the game's website doesn't have any of these listed on there just yet, but they've been announced on Instagram. Dave has talked about them in his athlete interviews. These are obviously real events. They just haven't posted to the game's website just yet. So we have event 6, the Friday Night Lights workout revealed. This one is actually available for the public to go see at Farrington Field at 8 p.m. Central Time in Texas if you're in the area, whether or not you have tickets. We do know that. So you can come see this. It's a pretty simple workout, and I think Dave had sort of indicated that it would likely be simple. And this season, Dave has had a push towards simplicity. He's talked about that. He talked about that with the Open, and we saw that, I think, some more simple things. So it's basic. This isn't even really basic CrossFit at this point. At this point, we really haven't had any like CrossFit-y workouts, like what you would think of as CrossFit workouts. Although all of these are CrossFit workouts, CrossFit can be a lot of different things. But when you think about the most traditional form of CrossFit workouts, couplets, triplets, we haven't really had that yet. We will have that. I am positive. These are 3 of the events. We will have 12 to 15 of them. Don't panic. And we'll get to that in the comment. But here's the event. It is a field sprint, so I'm guessing it's just going to be to one end of the field to the other. But maybe, very possibly, I am oversimplifying that, and it's actually going to be something a little bit more than that, because field sprint, kind of vague. Is it like, couldn't be like a field shuttle sprint, could it? Like where they eliminate people? I don't think so. Because it says field sprint rest 1,600 meters. So actually my guess is if you field sprint a little bit faster, you'll get more rest. But then theoretically, if you field sprint more middle of the pack, maybe you'd be stronger for the 1,600 meter. I don't know how long the rest is going to be. I don't know if the rest is uniform. Like say the field sprint, I just don't know how long that would take and where they're starting on the field. If it's like the whole football field. Not sure, but let's just for like a guesstimate's sake, it could be either that like everyone rests 1 minute in between or 2 minutes, or there's like a clock, like a running clock, and you have from 1 to 3 minutes to finish that field sprint. And then at 3 minutes, everyone starts the run. So that would mean some people get more rest than others. Or there could be a uniform rest, which everyone gets and people would start at different times. My guess is that everyone's going to start the 1,600 meter at the same time. This might be women and men going separately or in heats, but the field is pretty big. So I imagine you can get quite a few people out there, probably at least 20, as opposed to like heats of 10. So probably 20 or 40 athletes will be going at once. And I would imagine they want to have they have a lot of people out there for that 1,600 meters at once, because you want to see people trying to beat each other. And I'm guessing it's a standard track. So it's going to be 4 times around the track will be a 1,600 meter run. I imagine there's a field and then a track around it. So that is event 6, the second to last event before we have the first set of cuts. And someone commented on this morning chalk up post saying, pretty disappointed at the games right now. I'm traveling to see this in person and I'm going to watch them run, swim 4 miles, then run another mile, then step up on the box 1,000 times for Chad. We haven't gotten to Chad yet. That is the next event we will talk about, but they said not excited at all. I know there will be other events, but pretty disappointed so far in what I'm getting for the cost of this trip. Well, I hate to break it to this person, but kind of like what I just talked about, not 100% sure everyone's going to be allowed to go to that run swim 4 miles. Possibly, but I don't I don't know if that's the case. So maybe not. Just throwing that out there. So this person might be even more disappointed than they already are. But I will also want to say there could be 15 events. It could be 12, it could be 13. There's likely not less than 12 and likely not more than 15. 15 events is a lot. The truth is, most people that go to the CrossFit Games probably don't sit down and watch every heat of all 15 events. There's probably some, but I will say that as someone who's been there multiple times, I definitely have not ever watched all 4 heats of every single event. It's just a lot of time when I'm doing stuff for YouTube. I'm editing things in between. So this guy was going to probably miss some of these events anyway. And there's going to be a lot of other CrossFit events. Let's say it is 15 events. This is 3 of them. That means that we have 12 other events. And even if it's only 12 events, there's still 9 other events, which is more than there are at semifinals that you have the opportunity to see. And there is usually a run and a swim or some sort of swim that is difficult for people to watch. Good on video, but difficult for people to watch in person, especially when it's open water because you just can't see it as well. There's usually that, and there's usually a run, which is also difficult to watch. Most years of the CrossFit Games. This is not new. That part of it is not new. Let's look at all the programming before we say any of this is disappointing. Basically, that's what I wanted to say about that comment. But I saw it, and I'm sure some other people feel similarly about it. So I wanted to address that and say, like, hold your horses. There's a lot more to come. CrossFit Games is usually great. It's usually a really fun spectacle. There are usually events like these, though, that are a little bit less spectacular. And we're going to get to chat in a second, but that's a whole nother thing. But before that, for this, I think this will be exciting at the end. The field sprint's going to be exciting. They've done sprints before and they were exciting in the past, back in Madison, even back in Carson. And then the 1,600-meter run, like that's a pretty fast run for athletes of this capacity. So again, it's actually going to be fast and furious. And I think it's going to be fairly exciting. And maybe because it's so fast, when I think about it now, there might be like a 10-minute time cap on the field sprint and the 1,600-meter run. So they might do it in smaller heats to make it more of like a longer event at this Farrington field. I still think it's going to be exciting. It's going to be cool to see these people run. It's going to be cool to see these people have competitive running times for athletes who are not primarily runners. They're CrossFitters. It's going to be cool to have that metric of what their mile time is after a sprint too. So I think it's cool. I think it's exciting. Let me know in the comments what you think. And again, I think we really need the full picture. And for me, I very much understand that this is just a sliver. So there's a lot more things that could come up and that we can see, and that is going to be interesting as we go. Let's not panic. All right, let's go on to the final event that we know at this point, and the event that is supposed to end some people's CrossFit Games. It's the last event before the cut. So that event is Chad. I am going to pull up just a little thing from CrossFit about it, but just really to have something on the screen here to remind people of what it is. So here's what CrossFit ended up posting about Chad. You can read that if you want to, or go to CrossFit Games Instagram account and watch the video. Jocko announced it. It was the first announced workout of the CrossFit Games, announced on 4th of July. It is Chad, a hero workout for a fallen Navy SEAL who ended up taking his own life. He suffered from some PTSD and some traumatic brain injuries from his time served. And a lot of us have done Chad. I have done Chad. It was a big thing to do during COVID. 1,000 box step ups for time with a 35-pound sack for women and a 45-pound rucksack for men. So it's a 20-inch box for everyone. But it's also been announced that this is Chad with a twist. There is something involved in this Chad event that is not what we typically would do for Chad. There's some arguments that doesn't make it Chad, but I think what it will possibly make it is more exciting for the people who complain that it's not exciting. And for the people that complain it's not exciting, I know it's been compared to this before and they're not the same, but we had a marathon row a couple of years ago. And let me tell you, if you want to talk about boring, that was kind of boring. It was like 3 hours of people rowing, plus even more time. And it was so long. It's a really awesome feat when you think about it, and like the mental capacity and mental strength you have to stay in that for that long, especially when you haven't trained for that specifically. It actually is very impressive that these athletes did that. But if we're just talking about like what's fun to watch, not that wasn't super fun to watch. Cool to like unpack and think about after, but in the moment you're just watching someone row for like hours. So this is shorter than that, and these athletes will go fast on this, and there's a twist, and that twist may have to do with people getting cut mid-workout if they're like falling behind, maybe another movement they add in every like 100 reps or something. They'll probably move the box along the floor so that you can see it. Dave has talked about the story. Like Dave very much focuses on the layout and how it's going to look and be presented from the viewer's standpoint, from the people in the stands and the people at home. So they'll probably be moving the box at the very least. And there's a twist. So let's see what the twist is. I think it's really interesting. Again, it's like a mental test. Although we have some interesting comments on the screen here, which Laura Horvath, our current reigning champion, said respectfully what the duck will go with. And Pat Vellner also said, at least this time the no reps won't be a surprise. And that's true. I mean, possibly part of the reason they did this was because we had box step ups with the dumbbells in the open, and we saw a bunch of people get hit with no reps. So there's a possibility that Dave wants to emphasize that people should know how to do this correctly. And if they're going to get no repped, they're going to get no repped in person immediately by their judge. So it's going to take a lot of the guesswork out of it like we had at the actual quarterfinals. I am excited about the games this year. I think these are all interesting workouts. I think that people, like I said, have to remember this is part of a bigger picture, and that a lot of these things, like a run and swim, that happens so commonly in the CrossFit Games. It is a standard test for the fittest on earth. Let's not act like that's a crazy, boring, or I don't know what people think, but I think it makes sense. We see this, it's part of the test. And this is also one of the type of things that Dave Castro really likes, seeing that grunt work, seeing those people go to that dark place mentally, and who has the mental stamina to survive these kind of tests. That's something Dave likes to test. Dave is back taking the lead of the individual programming. This makes sense. And then they're doing something on a field, and they're going to be sprinting. That makes sense on a field. And we've seen sprint events before. I think the mile, that's going to be really cool to see those times, see how competitive these athletes are, see how fit they are. And then we're going to see the big weights. They just haven't been announced yet. It will be there. I am promising you there's a lot of cool events to come. We are going to see couplets or triplets. We are going to see the barbell. Like All of those things are yet to come. We just don't have all the information just yet. So stay tuned. Watch this space. Subscribe here if you're not subscribed yet. Subscribe to Barbell Spin, who I just talked about earlier and used a post. Subscribe to the CrossFit Games. Go to their Instagram. Follow them. There will be more announcements. There will be more workouts. It's going to be cool. It's going to be a spectacle. It's going to be fun. So let me know what you think so far of these workouts in the comments below. You can totally disagree with me. That's cool. I like to hear people's opinions. Make sure you leave a comment also of who you think is going to win the CrossFit Games. I'll be doing a video on that with my predictions, and maybe I'll use some of yours in the comments too. So leave that below. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.